All right, here we are. It is serverless office hours. I am Eric Johnson. I'm actually coming to you. This is not a fake background, by the way. See it kind of moving around because of my camera. I'm coming to you from San Francisco this week. Julian is out this week, so I'm stepping in. So I apologize, but I mean, Julian and I, we are pretty much the same person. Super excited to have Norm Johanson. Am I saying that right, Norm?
Yep, that's right.
All right, okay. Norm Johanson with me. Norm, tell them who you are and what you do.
So yeah, I'm a principal over in AWS working in the SDK and tools organization. I'm a long time focusing on all of our .NET tool offerings. So I do all of the SDK bits for .NET. I work with a lot of extra of our .NET tools. I also am the guy that goes and pesters the Lambda team to make sure, hey, let's have the best .NET support we can. So I work a lot with them with building our Lambda runtimes, and a lot of our client tooling that we have for Lambda comes a lot from there.
Beautiful. Yeah, that's and that's such a critical part. Someone has to pester. I pester the Lambda team as well, and as well as some of the other teams. I mean, it's a critical thing, and they love us for it. Um, so today we're going to actually be talking about .NET, right? Now .NET on serverless, but .NET and something specific, and we'll jump into it in a minute. I want to tell you, here's what to expect from me in .NET. Now, my past history. I was a .NET developer for about 3 years. I was horrible. And we're talking probably 98, 95. I mean, that's a little, I'm sorry, not
No,
2006,
that's
2006.
2001.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
you
No,
were
I'm
like
making things up.
inventing the future then.
Yeah.
So no wonder it was so hard.
Okay, it's all a lie. I've never done .NET. No, that's not true. I did it. It was about 2006. I realized I
Okay.
was a wrong part of my life there. And I loved it. I was actually a designer, and our developer quit, and they asked me, "What do we need?" And I said, "Well, we need a killer developer to replace him." So what they did while I was on vacation is they hired a really good designer, and they said,
No.
"You're the developer." I was like, "What? What?" So I learned .NET on the fly, but I loved it. I absolutely loved it. So today we're going to be talking about AWS Lambda and .NET Aspire, and if I'm right, specifically maybe some local development. Is that correct?
So yeah, .NET Aspire is like this new framework that the Microsoft team at .NET have been working on about last year or so.
Okay.
I think yeah, time flies by. Who can keep track of things?
It does. Yes. Yes.
So, and there's a lot of different ways of looking with Aspire. There is like, how do you deploy your applications, which is their newer thing. And also it's can used a lot, and this is where we've been really focusing on, is how you can sort of locally orchestrate your applications on your machine. So how do you kind of build your local dev environment?
Oh, man.
Especially like in Lambdas, right? You have like, I've got a dozen different Lambda functions. They all need to kind of talk to each other.
Right.
There's talking with front ends and all the like, well, yeah, I'm going to talk to this database. Like, how do I get all these things connected in a nice local dev environment? And that's kind of a lot how we've been how we could take advantage of these long-standing challenges when it comes to building the AWS application. How can we use Aspire to help build some, set up those local environments for you?
Okay. So that's nothing but good news to developers, right? I mean, that's something we hear all the time is, look, love, and to be fair, the Lambda console team has done some killer stuff in the Lambda console lately. I mean, they've really with VS Code there and all that stuff. But we recognize, and I can say this there, even that team, they recognize developers want to build in the IDE.
Especially static languages, right? I mean, the console does great things, but static languages, you can't compile your code in the console, right? You gotta have that whole thing.
Exactly.
So.
You're absolutely right. So they and even if you're doing non-compiled, even if you're doing a Python, or they still want to develop locally, and we recognize that. And so we're working hard to help developers do that. And so I'm pretty excited about this one. Anytime we get into the local console, the local IDE, it makes me excited. And .NET, actually, .NET's I've heard of .NET. It's a pretty popular language. And I know it's a silly thing. It's like saying, have you heard of Java? I mean, and obviously it's a very highly used language, and it works. And you can speak real honestly, it works really well in Lambda. We've found that it
gets better and better too, especially it's, I think, 10 years ago, we was like, well, this is old tech, but they're doing a lot of things to make this a faster, more modern languages. especially with the stuff that we have these days of being able to do native AOT. I'm not going to talk too much about that. I mean, I can, it has, but being able to compile your .NET applications into just native code, that really gets rid of a lot of that, the cold start problems that everyone says, hey, I use TypeScript because of the fast cold starts. But if you go native AOT in .NET, there's some constraints,
Right.
but it's still, now I get to use the language and tools I know on there. And we added the snap start support in for .NET last year too. So, there's a lot of stuff we got going on there. And then there's a lot of tool chains that we have in there. We have a lot of libraries to help you write Lambda functions in there. Like even if, hey, I want to take advantage of Lambda for all of its scaling and pricing models, but I don't want to necessarily change my programming model.
Right,
we've got the bridge libraries that say, I can write my asymmetric core web application. You write my recipe there, throw this bridge library in there, and it's at one line of code, and it works the same whether in there. So we have a lot of things to make it easy to do on there. So.
All right. Well, let's do this. So this show, I'm going to make a couple. Talk to the audience here for a moment, and then we're going to actually show code. So when your screen's ready, let me know and I'll bring it up. But one thing we'd love to do is this is serverless office hours. That means yes, we're going to present. We're going to talk about some stuff. We're going to talk about .NET, but we're also here to answer questions. General serverless questions, .NET questions, anything serverless related, anything AWS related that I know. Believe me, I have no problem going, I don't know that, but I'll try to help you find an answer. But I really encourage you to ask questions. Also, just throw into the comments if you can. Let us know where you're watching from. I know we have people from all over the world that watch this show. So we like to say hi. So thank you so much for joining us. And Norm, I'm going to bring your screen up if you're ready, and let's actually show some code.
All right.
My favorite thing to do is just get our hands dirty here. So, all righty. So tell us what you're going to show us here.
All right. So the first thing is just because I'm guessing, Eric, you don't know anything about Aspire other than what I just told you about. So I want to just give you this is the sales pitch. Like if Microsoft was telling you this is their elevator pitch, right?
Okay.
So here is this is the starter application. I go into Visual Studio, and to be clear, I do everything in Visual Studio. I'm a longtime .NET dev. Everything that you do here, you could also do in VS Code or Writer, like all of the .NET IDs. You could do any of this stuff in here.
Okay.
But so this is the starter application here, where you have like a web application that has its front end, and it's got a back end application which has just APIs, right? I mean,
Hey Norm, can I get you to maybe blow it up just a pinch? I can't in Visual Studio Code or not.
I don't know. Actually, my blind. The code will be bigger in a second here. I don't know how to make the solution a little bigger.
That's fine. That's good.
So basically, you need to know we got a back end service and a front end service.
Okay.
So, but Aspire adds this new concept called an app host. An app host you can think of as like the orchestrator. So if you can think of like a Docker Compose, it's where this is how everything should be spun up. So this is the thing you actually debug, right? Where we say, I want to have my back end project. I also want to have like a Redis, container in there.
Mm-hmm.
So I can have, if I have all these, maybe I also might want a database container, spin all those things up. I can have my front end project, and the front end project can then have dependencies, right? It's going to depend on that cache that we just created from Redis, and it can have a back end dependency on there. So just how you orchestrate all these things being connected. You're giving me a look.
Well, I'm like, they're stepping out of the application here. I mean, that's this is so we have several companies. I mean, we do this Amplify. It's a little bit of apples and oranges, but it's a little apples and apples because we do this as well with Amplify. I know Vercel does this in kind of maintaining that front end, back end. It's kind of this holistic view. But I know previously with Microsoft, it's like, okay, we'll help you build your whole application, but it's all back end and delivering HTML, things like that.
Right.
But now we're kind of separating that out. My look was like, this is cool. So.
Right. Well, so now in your ID, again, this is whatever ID you're using, right? Your app host is your startup project. So I'm going to launch the debugger, right? I'm launching F5. This is what we're going to go and say. So this is going to go start up Aspire, which brings up this dashboard on the wrong screen, of course.
So
and then this is showing you, this is all of the resources that we've got here, right? So we've got our front end, our back end, and they're all running on here. We can see our logs for each one. And so note, I launched this inside Visual Studio, so each of these projects are now connected to the debugger, right? So as I go and do these things, I can start stepping through. So here's our front end. Again, this is the stock application inside in there. So I'm clicking here. I'm going to go on the weather application. I'm stopping at the breakpoints in the front end application. I could go and imagine this is doing something more useful.
Right.
This is going to call into our back end. And Aspire is taking care of that sort of application service discovery, so it knows how I can actually find the ports and everything to connect over to there, so I can keep going. And now I'm debugging in my back end, right?
So this is an end-to-end, front-end, back-end.
Right.
If I understood that right, hey, Peter from New Zealand, yeah, Peter's out there. So if I understood that right, so I've got back end or front end breakpoints. I have back end breakpoints, and it can kind of go back and forth between them as they're hit.
Right, because all the projects, when back in that app host, we have all these projects that we add. The IDE knows, and again, JetBrains VS Code Writer will know, attach those to the debugger in the IDE, and so we can start just stepping through all those things. So.
This is cool. Okay.
So that's the elevator pitch. We don't want to spend too much time on that. We want to get to yeah. Let's get to us now. So
yeah, exactly. Yeah, this is really cool. Yeah, I'm interested to see how this applies to AWS Serverless.
Okay, so we launched support. We added support for Aspire. I want to say about a year ago. The first support was really just sort of having CloudFormation support, being able to provision my resources and stuff like that as part of that F5 experience.
Okay.
So it was just about a month ago, we updated our support to now include Lambda, being able to actually now include a Lambda function as part of that app host. So take a drink of water here, too much talking.
Of course.
Okay, so to start with, what I thought I would do is look at this Lambda function. I'm going to say, admittedly, it's a simplified Lambda function here. But I'm guessing most people, no one has started with Aspire yet, so they just have Lambda functions. How do I start taking my Lambda function and start using it with Aspire, right? So here is a function here that, this is a function that's using our messaging library. We've got our AWS messaging library out there to basically pull messages from SQS.
Oh, okay.
And essentially, you write your Lambda function that we list all of our handlers per function type in there. So again, this is all the stuff that we build for .NET developers that we make sure works for either containers or Lambda functions in there. So we have this whole other high-level library for dealing with Lambda functions. We also have this library called annotations. Sorry, I'm clicking too fast here.
You're okay.
Lambda annotations, which allows us to write Lambda functions where you can just add an attribute saying, this here is the Lambda function, this is its policies, and including all of .NET's dependency injection system. So these are the libraries we've already had, but now how do I make this take advantage of Aspire? So the first thing we need to do is we need to create that app host project, the thing that we saw before, so we can orchestrate this.
Okay.
So I'm going to go and say new project. I'm going to say Aspire. There's a bunch of things in here, but we would just want the app host project for now. So I'm going to just name this app host, just as convention. 9.1 is the latest version, matching, they're kind of following .NET's major version. They haven't done that many versions, right? So, but 9.1 is the latest, and that's the one that we've added our Lambda support in. So you want to do that. Okay, and before I forget, I'm going to make this a startup project because I always forget to do that.
Oh, what does that mean?
So that means when I make this a startup project, it means that when I do F5, to debug, it's going to launch this thing in the debugger.
Gotcha. Okay. All righty.
Okay. So we've got now our program file. We can start doing our orchestration on here, but there's a couple things we need to do. First is you need to make our app host have a dependency on our Lambda project so I can actually see it and start orchestrating it.
Okay.
So, and if I had like a bunch of Lambda projects, right, that's what you do. All those Lambda projects, add them as a dependency. And then I need to add our integration. Our integration is just a NuGet package. So this is all you need to do is add AWS Aspire hosting. That is our NuGet package out there to your app host. So there's no like extra dependencies, nothing else you need to install. As long as you have the regular .NET tooling and you add our NuGet package, that's all you need to do to make everything.
All right, so let me ask you a couple of questions here.
Okay.
If that's a logical stop. If not, I'm still going to ask them. I told you I'd interrupt.
Go right ahead.
Yeah. So when you say Lambda project, okay, is that generally a one-to-one? We're bringing this is one Lambda function, or is could it be a project that has 5 or 6 Lambda functions in it, or is that structure you're thinking Lambda project is one Lambda function? So I may add 10 projects that brings in 10 Lambda functions.
So you can do it either way. So this demo here, I'm going to do it as a project has one function in here.
Okay.
The next demo, some we got time. That one is going to be where I've got one project that has 5 different functions or something like that. It's however you want to do. Ultimately, it's going to be So
you have flexibility. Okay, gotcha.
Right. Yeah. Okay. So now we got our app host project set up. It has its dependencies. It has our NuGet package out there. So now we can start just orchestrating our Lambda function. So it's going to be pretty easy for us here, right? So we're going to say builder add AWS. So all of our, we've kind of prefixed it as add AWS. So you can see we got the CloudFormation, DynamoDB, but then there's the add Lambda function in here. So we can say projects. This is the project we have a dependency on.
So you're adding a pre-existing one right now.
Yep.
Got it.
Then we're just going to give this. So this name here is like it's our logical resource name within inside Aspire. So whatever. So we're just going to say it's our order function, and then we got to give it our function handler string, like the magic string to know what to call. I'm just going to go steal that from our CloudFormation template here. And so this is where, again, like if you have multiple functions in there in that project, you just have different handler string in there.
Okay.
So this has got the red squiggly of badness here because, so like I said, we just launched this feature about a month ago, and we're in this. We're marking this as preview on there because we're wanting customers' feedback. Is this working or things like that? So we're using the .NET feature. So you actually look at this code here to say that it requires that you opt into preview features.
Okay.
So easy way to do that, you just go in and you add I want to suppress that on there to say, yep, I'm opting into preview features.
All right.
So this is just so, again, I personally feel like we're pretty good. We're confident what we have here, but yet we want to get that customer feedback to make sure this is right. And we might need to make some breaking changes based off the feedback that we get.
Okay.
Okay, but that's at a minimum, that's what we need to do to get started, right? We added the app host project and we just added that registry in there. So if I now go and do F5 debugging, we're going to go in and wait. Spin up. And here comes the dashboard on the wrong screen again.
It's going to happen every time.
Nah. All right. So here we've got our Lambda service emulator. That it's a resource that we automatically injected in by adding a Lambda function. And then there's our Lambda function in here. And this service emulator is sort of acting like when you deploy a Lambda function to Lambda, right? There is a runtime API that your Lambda function has to do to get the next events, get report events. That's what this essentially is it's a local version of that the runtime API.
Right. It's it's the same way Sam does it.
It's similar to Sam.
Okay.
And if you look at the output when we started, we deliver, our tooling. So, you've been out of .NET for a while. So .NET has its own concept of tools nowadays, right? So I've got this, you can tools concept here. And this is our test tool here, which acts as that emulator on there.
Okay. All right.
So when I ran the F5 debugging, it automatically makes sure that tool is installed. So this is why I didn't have to do any work to make it happen. You can see in this case, I've already done this before. It's already installed. If it wasn't installed, it would have automatically taken care of acquiring that and getting it installed on here. So again, all you need to do is get the NuGet package, and we'll make sure that the tool is installed on there.
Got it.
Okay. So I know, drum roll here, right? So we got our Lambda function. So we can go in and start debugging, right? So here's our button here. And so we got this sort of UI that sits on top of that runtime API. So we can go in and plug events and things like that. So let me here. So if I go and steal my example event here, right? So this is the, what you would expect to see that JSON that sends in there, right? I can go and invoke that, and that should be stopping at my breakpoints, right? So here I am. I didn't have to do anything else, but now I'm starting to break through here, and I'm getting into my handler here, which is, this is a Lambda function that's doing product feedback to see, should I go in, is this feedback to say that these are the best headphones? What is the sentiment analysis? It's positive feedback, right? So, but I'm able to step between all these things right in here, right?
Okay, so I'm going to interrupt for a second here for those watching. Yeah, for those watching. So what we've done. So if you, I wish I could have you raise your hands, but if you're new to serverless is what's called an event-driven architecture. Meaning, and that's what Norm just did. You have to have an event to invoke a Lambda function. So basically, and this is super technical, Norm. See if you can hang with me on this. But
okay.
when you define event-driven architecture, this is how we do it. We say something happens,
right,
and we react. There you go. I can say it again if you need me to. I'm working on a blog, but that's, and I'm being facetious here, but that idea of something happens and we react versus polling all the time. So there's some different ways. Now, I think later you're showing, in a sense, AWS is actually polling SQS when this goes out and this is working. It will, under the hood, it'll pull SQS for you, and then invoke a Lambda when those events come through. So the event structure that Norm was doing, or the event pattern, was one from an SQS, right? Like
this is a sample. I recorded what an event would be from an SQS, but that's good.
Okay, gotcha.
You're right. Like, this is, here I to recreate the testing environment, I've captured what Lambda would normally send as that event, and I sent it through here. But you're right, like this, we react to event, and we can add event sources. And that fit perfectly into where I wanted to go to next, which is we just released, I know, but we could see each other's thoughts there.
That's right.
So just yesterday, we released a new version of our library for that Aspire hosting AWS NuGet package, that instead of just emulating sending the JSON here, I can actually hook this up to a SQS event as an event source right here in my app host. So I can actually now just say, here I can say with SQS event source. And so here I can pass in the queue, like a queue URL, and it'll just start pulling it in there.
Okay.
Or,
all right, so let me ask you this. Is it handling the IAM for this?
The getting permissions and stuff like that?
Yes.
Okay. So how credentials are working? Because all this is really just running locally. So
that's I guess I meant for when we deploy, but yeah.
So what this is doing locally is, it's just, right now I didn't specify any credentials or any region right now. My dev job happens to have a default profile and a default region in my SDKs, just happen to automatically pick that up. If I don't want to do that, or if I want to configure, like I have a certain profile I want to use, which is using these permissions in this region, what we would do in Aspire is we'd say var SDK config, builder at AWS SDK config, and I'd say with the Eric profile and with with region US East 2.
Okay.
And then I can then say on the Lambda function itself, say now with reference that SDK config.
Got it. Okay.
So now when I run this locally, it'll use that configuration to figure out. So you still have to have like your machine, your profile set up to match whatever's IAM roles and stuff you would use in there.
But theoretically, you've done this through AWS Configure on your local AWS client or your CLI. So
Yeah.
when you work with AWS, the first thing you do is you install the AWS CLI, and you'll have a default credentials. Generally, it'll have you do that, but then you set up profiles. So
Right.
and I know you know this, Norm, but this is more for those
Yep.
watching. So this is really cool. I have probably 12 profiles, one for different accounts that I work on and stuff like that. I actually don't have a default profile because I have deployed when I was a contractor or a
Right.
consultant. I have deployed the wrong architecture to the wrong customer and say, tear that down, tear that down. But it's super handy. I make myself choose where I'm deploying. This is a great way to kind of isolate those and get the roles. And the other cool thing is, generally, and come on, we've all done it. I'm sure you have one or two on there. The ones you have on there have full access, right? They have admin access to
Right.
do everything. But in reality, you can actually set up smaller, like realistic users or roles to
Right.
use that give us, that give us a realistic version of what what we're using here. So
Right. Like I would probably
yeah,
more literally, instead of the Eric profile, like this is the profile I want to use for when I want to test this Lambda function.
there
Right.
you go.
And that's going
Yeah,
to be using a role that is, geared towards similar to the permissions that I would have when deploying to Lambda.
that's right. That's
So,
right. Yeah, very cool.
all right. But I don't actually have that profile, so I'm not going to have that in there right now.
Okay,
But
fair enough.
I'm
Fair
just
enough.
going to finish up showing you how you can use the SQS event source here. So, like I said, you can put in the straight Q URL in here. But I also mentioned we have, CDK CloudFormation sort of, embedded in there as well. So I could actually create a CDK stack
No.
and say builder at AWS CDK stack. And then we have some, you can do anything you can with CDK, right? Oh, I should give this a
Yeah.
name.
Yeah. Okay. So,
App
and this is,
resources. But we
yeah,
do
I
have some
knew there was
utility.
.NET CDK. It's used .NET CDK under the hood.
Yep. And then I can do, like I said, we have some helpful utility methods that say just add a queue,
Okay.
so I don't have to
Yeah.
do
Yeah.
much
Yeah.
of it. So the queue,
Oh my gosh, that's cool. That's cool.
and then I just go and add that there, right?
Okay.
Okay, so let's launch this. Crossing fingers.
So for those of you, and I'm sure there's somebody watching that hasn't heard of CDK, but while this is running, I'll explain really quick. This stands for the Cloud Development Kit. Guy named Elad, who used to work for AWS, created this, and it's a bit of magic. I mean, it is just a really cool thing. So what it does is it allows you to programmatically generate CloudFormation. It still goes to CloudFormation, so it's going to work with everything CloudFormation works,
Right.
but you programmatically generate it with languages like, of course, here .NET or Python or TypeScript or Java, or there's a lot of different languages, and it's become the kind of framework for many different toolings like this. It's super cool. So
Right, and also with our integration with, I mean, not that I have anything wrong with the CDK CLI, but again, we want to make sure people don't have to do anything out of their ID, right? I didn't do anything with the CDK CLI. I didn't even acquire it.
Nope.
You have to have Node installed, obviously, because that is always a requirement of CDK. Once you have Node installed, everything else just again works with it. I just ran in the app host. You can see it's all finished here. I have my stack. You can see that it has done all the provisioning on here, on there. And so now, let's see here. So I've got my application. I've got all my resources. There's that event source that we added on here.
Yeah.
So let's, now ideally I would have some other application that would, in probably my part of my Aspire application, that would be submitting messages onto my queue.
Right.
I'm punting terribly here. I just have a very simple thing here that's just going to go publish. I'm going to go grab my queue here. So this is our integration to Visual Studio. We got our ID here, and I'm going to take that, stick that queue here because I'm just lazy and cheating.
Yeah, it works.
And just going to go kick this off. All it does is just publishes a message, right?
Okay.
Sends that message up to our queue. Nothing, again, using that same library. And then we go. Now we're at the breakpoint, right? Because that event source is pulling the messages and then is actually starting to go and debug it.
Okay. So this is developer dream. Single pane of glass. I mean, you haven't deployed anything yet, correct?
Right. This is yeah.
Okay.
All in that. Then this is where, again, and for anyone watching, this is where we need that. Our focus so far has been heavily geared towards using Aspire to make a great local development environment. We haven't really done. There are parts of Aspire that can also be used for deployment. We haven't invested in that yet, and this is where we're looking for. Is that what customers want us to do? Right. This is
Right.
we're this is in this is a very, everything is being done in the open. I'm trying to find my right browser. Just kidding. We have our repo out here. This is where everything is being done out here, right? And this is where, if the community wants more of this, let us know, right? We're basically letting the community tell us what they want and building out on there. So.
And what we'll do, and if you'll hit me in the private or in the chat with that link, I'll post these. I'm going to post an X and a LinkedIn and a Blue Sky. I'll post all those with resource links off this. So if you'll just throw that in the chat, that's great. And weirdly enough, I don't have access to the Twitch chat at the moment, because something's happening with my login. This is horrible. But I'm going to post that. So if you're watching, we'll get that out there. And some super cool stuff going on with this. So
just seeing we haven't. And by the way, again, we had that event source again just to show how that is. This same Lambda service emulator is acting as the runtime API. If I go back to the UI page for that, which is not coming up for me, sorry, you can see that this is that event that we just got over there, right? Like, it's all still chaining together, right? When I ran that program to supplement the event, the test tool basically pulled that event, and I can go re-invoke it again if I wanted from there. So
that is just so slick, because that's one of the challenges, and I'll be really honest, when we're doing we're developing serverless. So the idea of serverless, and if you're watching, hopefully you already kind of get this, but the idea of serverless is really, we call it serverless or serviceful is another way of saying, rather than serverful. There's a difference, but it's the idea is we're chaining services together instead of having to code everything, right? So you're having SQS and Lambda, so that's a queue and a compute. And a lot of times we would do, queues are not a new thing. We've been doing queues,
it's the original service, right?
Exactly. Yeah. It is the original service, and later maybe you add an event bridge bus. So the idea of a queue, a bus, a pub sub, so there's some patterns here that we use services for rather than having to code for all that and get into orchestration and go on that. But the idea is, as we chain these together very simply, they make a really robust application. That's the beauty of serverless, is we've got this scalable, decoupled application. However, when you're developing locally, sometimes you run into challenges like, oh, what does an event from SQS look like? Well, here's a way to generate it. How do I test an event coming in? And I love the fact that you've never left your local IDE. I mean, you ran a script to generate a topic, but that's not a hard thing to do. And I mean,
right.
Especially with all our code assistants now. But a lot of that, is done without ever leaving this, and I just think it's magic. It's super cool. By the way, it looks like our producer Paco. Thank you, Paco. By the way, he is posting these to the channel on Twitch here. So if you're looking for the links to these, he's posting those. Thanks, Paco. Appreciate it. So, all right, Norm, back to you.
Okay, a few things. Well, I'm still in the breakpoints because just so you know, and again in the Aspire spot, like if I want to see the output, right? We got the log. I don't think actually. Do I have any? I don't think. Oh, I didn't know if I have any log messages. I don't think I wrote any log messages in my Lambda function.
Oh no!
But if I did, there. So.
Well, but you have breakpoints now. So what? Because right. This is the hack developer way. We log out, right? I mean, this is how I develop. I write a bunch of logs, and then I read the logs after I invoke, because I don't know how to do breakpoints. But now you have breakpoints. You don't need logs, right? You still use logs, but you get what I'm saying. So.
Okay. So this is our. Okay. So this is how you can take an existing Lambda function and take Aspire. Does that make sense? All good?
It does, yeah. I'm following you.
All right. Okay, so I got one more demo-ish to do here. This is a slightly more advanced one here.
I don't want to steal your thunder, but are you going to show like API stuff?
I am going to show API stuff.
Right on. Super excited. Okay.
Here we go. We got this is imagine. So this is again simplistic for demo purposes. Imagine we've got our set of APIs that are going to go and do account management, right? I can go get my list of accounts. I can create new accounts and list my accounts, right? So I got 3 Lambda functions here on there. Again, this is using our annotations library where we can just actually annotate, the URLs and all those things on there. Okay.
Okay.
So this one I'm trying to be a bit more professional, pretending I'm putting that hat on here, right? So here, I am, I'm using our OpenTelemetry library so we can get we can make sure we get all of our traces set up here so we can see where things are going on. We're still using our dependency injection on here. And so this, I should go back here. Our Lambda function here is the idea that we have a Redis cluster that we want to go see, hey, have we already gotten our account from our, is it stored in our Redis cluster? If so, use that. If not, go back to our DynamoDB database, get it from there, and then and store it in our cluster, back in our cluster in there, right? Sort of adding a caching layer in there. So, so we're going to have, as part of our dependency injection, we're going to go and add that Redis client in there. We're adding our service clients in there. And I haven't talked about this yet, but another part of Aspire is sort of having this service defaults package project. I know the font's small over there, so I'm just going to open this up here. The service defaults is kind of where it's like this shared project amongst all of your projects in your application where you can put your best practices on here. Like I want my retry strategies here, add resilience configurations in here. It is also where I can commonly set up all of my, I want OpenTelemetry used on here, right? So this is where OpenTelemetry is all configured for all of my projects in here. And I've added in our AWS instrumentation as well, and our Lambda instrumentation and the Redis instrumentation. So we can make sure we see all of the stuff that's happening in here. So give me a look.
No, this is a good look. All my looks are good right now. I think this is where the other struggle, and this isn't a serverless struggle, this is a developer struggle, is telemetry, right? We're horrible storytellers about our apps, very honestly. And that's the idea of telemetry is, what's the story of our app? Is it choking at this volume? Is it, or do we have too much resources running? Now with serverless, because it's on demand, that's not so much a case, but and so I love that it's kind of a telemetry first approach where we're adding it as part of the application as we go.
Yeah.
And that's a real, and so here's where you're getting kind of, you're fuzzing that line between operations and developer and stuff like that. But this is really slick because under the hood, you're taking advantage of, CloudWatch, you're taking advantage of X-Ray. And X-Ray, if you're not familiar with X-Ray will allow you to kind of see, it's great to know. I get logging out of my Lambda function and I say, hey, my Lambda function's hanging up here. Here's a problem. But reality is, when you're looking at it in a holistic view, it's like, well, is there a problem at DynamoDB? Is that lagging? Or is it over at this, so this tracing allows you to cross services and make life super easy. I'm sorry, this is just
you're great.
Through this,
And in this place, again, this is a local development, which has different characteristics when you're running locally than production, right? But if you can't tell a good story locally, this is what's going on, it's going to be really hard to tell that story in production. So even though I'm going to show you this is what things look like here locally on my machine, obviously these performance numbers aren't going to make, they're running my machine. I'm going to have breakpoints, right? But if I can't see it here, I'm not going to see it where it really matters.
This more tells you, this is the sketch of the story, right? I mean, this is great. Not telling a story costs you money.
Yeah.
I'm going to need to point that in a pillow somewhere because I'm telling you, it's critical.
Okay. And so, we can see when we're setting up all of our dependencies, we've got that call in our add service defaults so that we're going to have all of our Lambda functions are going to have all that telemetry in here.
Okay.
And again, also, we've got, our injected services. We got our trace providers, all that. And then again, I don't. This is side-tailing into the annotations library, which I think we can do a lot of cool things. But yeah, here we got all of our Lambda functions, and I could have many other projects here. In here, like if I had more time, I would have wanted to have, like, I could have my front end application, which maybe that's a container application, which has a reference to this weapon, and they could all talk together. But I didn't get that far preparing today. But let's take a look at how we compose this with our app host here, right?
Okay.
So starting off here, I got first I got to have my Redis container, right? Because I was going to use that, so we've added that on here. This comes from NuGet packages, Aspire NuGet packages that give us those methods here. We don't need to go too far into that one, but that is, again, orchestrated for us. The other thing is I need my DynaDB backend, right? So I got a couple ways I could do that.
That single line on 9 is bringing up a Redis cluster for you.
All right. So yeah, all I do is I add that on the app host side, and then I add this part here on the application side, and that's what tied them all together. So
all right.
So for DynaDB, I could either provision my tables. Again, you saw what I did before. I had CDK. I could go and construct all those here. We also added support for DynaDB local, which has local development. So that's what I'm going to do here. Is I actually added. Let's just add DynaDB local, and then once that, and that's going to pull in that DynaDB container, because DynaDB local is treated as a container. Pull it up and then spin it up, just similar like we saw with Redis. And then I'm going to go and just, like, these are the tables. I need my accounts table here, and I'm going to seed it with some data in here.
All right, so that's the migration, basically. I mean, you're creating to. So here's an interesting factor. If you're looking at this, and maybe you're thinking this, but I know I am. My biggest downfall to local development is I cannot, for the life of me, figure out Docker network. It just kicks my tail every time. So this is doing that for you. I mean, this is handling it. So, that's amazing.
Yeah, and to be fair, like, I only need Docker if I'm using stuff like DynaDB local or Redis. The Lambda stuff that we did, like in the previous demo, there was no Docker involved in that one. And then that's something good to know, recognizing I'm on a Windows laptop. That means my Lambda function is really running on Windows. So I'm not going to debug any platform-specific issues in this situation. This is great for debugging my application logic problems like that. Okay, so now we've got our cache layer, we have our backend layer. Now we got to start adding our Lambda functions, right? We had on this, so similar to what we just saw before, right? We got all 3 of our Lambda functions. We've added over here, right?
Got it.
And they got the references to DynaDB local. So this is going to make sure that when the SDK talks to DynaDB local, it's going to actually override the endpoint to talk to DynaDB local, not to the real service. So I'm not coding anything in my Lambda functions to talk to DynaDB local. I'm just doing that, making sure we're waiting for it, adding the caching layer as well. I can also, as part of the options, I can, because we've got in Lambda, right, we've got levels of logging that we can do. Normally, we just log information. I can override that because locally, I probably do want to see everything that's possible. I don't care about filling up my logs versus when I deploy. So I can change that to turn that to be debug logging inside my Lambda functions. You could also turn on the structured logging as well, if that's what you wanted.
Yeah. Okay, so here's my question for you. And this is obviously it's a broader question, or maybe not. Does Aspire or .NET or whatever the decision maker is, does it have understanding of I'm local or I'm deploying to production? And maybe that's the whole thing this is. So, meaning you've put in some things here. Is what I'm looking at just to coordinate the local development, or is this going to be the deployment as well later? And will it know, hey, obviously I'm not using DynamoDB local, so hit the actual DynamoDB. Is there, how does it, and maybe I don't need to know the black box stuff, but is it aware of all that?
So this is really just coordinating for the local part. We could, and this Aspire has the capabilities, and this is where we're looking for the community. Like, what do you want us to do? Aspire has the capabilities of, like, under the covers. This kind of can get generated into. I can run the app host to just say, generate me a manifest. Don't run it, but generate me a manifest of the application topology that says, oh, you have connected a Lambda function to a Redis cluster. So we know that, and then we could then choose to build a tooling that says, oh, we see you want Redis. Let's make sure when we do deployment, let's spin up a Redis from Elasticache and then set up those environment variables that are required to connect those up. Because ultimately, like when it comes to like this here, to find that, the magic that this is ultimately there's an environment variable set, which Lambda, you can have environment variables that says this is my connection string, right?
Okay.
So we can still do all of those things on there. And then this is how I would do. I would probably update my CloudFormation template without Aspire. I would update my CloudFormation template to say, okay, also provision the Redis cluster and set the environment variable on there.
Yeah. Okay.
So we haven't done any of that work, and this is the part where we're trying to figure out, like, is this people want or not? But we definitely could. But so yeah, today all this is about like setting things up for our local spot.
Very cool. Thank you for explaining that.
Yeah. Okay, so now we got our 3 Lambda functions. They're all working, so I could do F5 and I could go to that UI and then put in the JSON events that we saw before. But the extra gotcha here, not gotcha, the last here is we also have an API gateway emulator. So instead of using the UI, I can go in and actually go define, I want to use the REST version of it, or I could do the HTTP on there. This is the new thing we just added. But normally you would just get a random port assigned to you,
right?
As Aspires. But we just added it. You can override it to say I specifically want to use a port. Like so, every time I know I can hit that. That's an option here. Okay. And then I add each of my Lambda functions saying for the get, this is its verb and this is its path, right? You can do all that stuff on there, as well as like the proxy ones you can do, because in API Gate, right? You can just do the proxy, add sign. You can do all those things on here.
Okay.
So now I have all those things connected. Are we ready to F5 and debug it?
Let's do it.
All right.
So we're setting up an API locally.
Okay. It's gonna go the wrong screen, of course.
Yeah.
Last demo. Let's see if we can not crash on the last demo. Demo gods be in our favor. Okay. So here we are. You can see we got all of our containers started up. Our two different containers. All of our Lambda functions are lighting up. We have our API gateway emulator up. Everything is hooked up.
Ridiculous.
So I now have an endpoint here for the API emulator. I can go hit that as I would anything else. I'm going to actually use Postman just to see here. So here's Postman going to that seed data here, that hard-coded port I put in there. I can just go and send that. Here I am. I'm stepping through my breakpoints, right? It's all connected up through.
Ridiculous. This is
and
great.
Going through. So and I can go in and I can hit it again just for funsies. And we got all our posts, so I can see I'm going to go create a new company here. Again, so we're able to debug multiple Lambda functions with all in the same context here.
All right. That is so cool.
So we talked about OpenTelemetry, right? We added all that work to make sure we could shoot it. And so this is a great feature of Aspire's dashboard is all that's collected right here. I can go to the traces, and here's those invocations, right? So you can see here's that get function. And I had the breakpoint on, so hence the long thing here, right? But you can see here's the invocation. This is where we called Redis, and it wasn't there. We went to DynaDB. We went back, set it back into Redis, right? It's all, this is that telling, if I can't tell my story locally,
that's right.
I'm not going to see it here, right? So these numbers might not, but I can see this is what's doing here on the first time. Then when I invoked it a second time, I can see, well, just got it right from the cache, right?
How much time do we spend just figuring out the right metric and right location to tell that, stuff like that?
Right.
It's really interesting. And you may find, there's a good chance you may run this locally and for maybe local resources or something like that. Maybe one thing takes a long time, another short. And then when you deploy it, those might be a little reversed. But the reality is you can see them. You get to have the data to make that comparison. Most likely, they're going to tell similar stories. We know that it takes a little longer to do A over B. I'm not going to try to throw things out there, but you have those stories, and when you can, and I've done my fair share of going out and trying to create metrics and alerts and things like that in CloudWatch. And CloudWatch is so powerful; you can do a lot, but it's complicated. And when you can
Hmm.
when you can run it here and get a local version of that, yeah, it's just great. It's really funny, and I tell the story when I speak publicly, but I can't tell you how many companies I work with. It's like, all right, what are you doing with your stats? I mean, well, we store them. We log everything. I go, oh, what are you doing with
Right.
it? We store it. We store it. Like, okay,
Okay.
what are you doing with that? And
Right.
they look at me like, we just told you we store it. I'm like, are you alerting off it? Are you reading it? Do
Right.
you have dashboards? Do you have, that kind of stuff? So here's an interesting thing. Any chance this dashboard could get generated out to a CloudWatch dashboard?
Ooh, actually, that's a good question. I know that they've also been doing work. So the dashboard that Aspire is mostly been created for that, helping the local development. Obviously, a lot of people like this dashboard. It's
Yeah,
very nice and
that's
handy.
great. Yeah,
So there's a lot of people in the community that are trying to figure like, well, how can I have this in production?
yeah, yeah.
Um, but I mean, with the traces, it looks great. But you got to remember, this is traces. It's storing whatever can in memory, right? So obviously,
Yeah,
it's going
yeah,
to have a
fair,
limited view.
fair.
I
Yeah.
don't know about how extensible that part is as far as like getting CloudWatch and things like that on it. That's interesting to go look into. I'm not sure on that so much.
If you end up doing that, I want part of the or the copyright or what
Oh
trademark?
yeah,
What is it? Royalty there?
all
Yeah,
the
yeah, yeah. Yeah, there it
all
is.
those
Yeah, I want a
royalty
puzzle
checks I get
piece.
for this work.
Exactly. Well, now here's a trick. If you're watching this, Norm already knows this, but if you do need to build dashboards and you want to make it, move it elsewhere. One of the cool things in CloudWatch, you can go ahead and build the dashboard and build getting everything in. Once you have it lined up, you can actually export that and drop it into your CloudFormation, and so that
Oh, okay.
CloudFormation
I
can
didn't know
create.
that. So,
Okay, there you go. You can create so you can get that dashboard because the dashboard format it's a JSON. And so
right.
you can grab that, and then you can actually have that as part of your cloud formation to say, okay, now you deploy this over in your production account. So, because my thought is, could you export the JSON from this or do some type of mapping? It'd be kind of cool. So, but that's so off topic. I have a bunch of
Yeah.
other things that I'm looking at this going, okay, I want this and I want this. So,
Yeah.
uh,
This is the exciting, like, where I feel like we're at the tipping point. Like we're getting this in here. There's a lot of cool things that we can do in this space, and this is where, I really want to get the community involved
yeah.
in this because again, like, I mean, obviously I'm on a team that has a million things that we have to do, so it's always a priority of which because we also have to support all the hundreds of AWS services that go out, things like that. So
Of course. Yeah.
we're trying to figure out like what to do.
You
So it's like
don't.
getting that
Just
customer feedback.
serverless, Norm. Come on.
Oh man, it's a crazy world we live in.
Yeah,
So
exactly. Yeah, yeah. So maybe some containers, some ECS serverless containers. I'll allow it. So,
I got to make sure
um,
that people can call all of our services from their
there you
Lambda
go.
functions. There you go.
There you go.
So,
There you go. One of the cool things. Are you a step functions guy at all? You deal with that much?
yeah.
Okay. All right. So step functions, they have to support all the services as well. So one of the things they did is a long time ago, about 3 years ago, they converted because they used to build them all for each service. They'd build out a customized handler to talk to and stuff. But they realized there's already an SDK doing this. So we're just
Right.
going to use the SDK. And all of a sudden, step functions could support tens of thousands of
Yeah.
calls versus it's fantastic, it's brilliant. So they just do like a refresh quarterly and it brings brings a bunch of the new SDK commands in and stuff. It's super cool. So off topic, but there it is. So
Yeah.
well, do you have anything else you want to show before we're looking at about 6 minutes left? So do you have anything else you want to show, or
I think that we
you showed a
covered
ton.
this.
This is amazing. So
I did want to do one shout out to something that's not Aspire.
hit it.
The obviously, yeah, my main day job is supporting the .NET SDK,
Yeah.
which is so we are working on our V4, our new major version. That is getting close to wrapping up. We're hopefully getting. I can't give a date because this database we never. But
Of course, yeah.
we're feeling pretty confident that there's
Okay.
not really more features we're doing it. It's going to be we're just in that final like give it some more baking time. So and the previews are out there. I think we're in preview 12 or 13 out there. Highly recommend people follow that. We have I'm going to go in our repo. We have a tracking issue for people to follow on there. This is a very evolutionary major version bump. So you should going from V3 to V4 should not be that hard. It is, just fixing up a lot of legacy things.
Gotcha.
Because
Okay.
we supported the current V3 supports .NET Framework 3.5. That's probably when you were coding in .NET. Like we are
Yes,
finally
yes, it
dropping back.
is.
They're doing a lot of a lot of the breaking changes you'll see in this are just really like things that probably people weren't even using. It's just the technical baggage that we've been accumulating. It has a lot of, the reason I want to bring it up here is that I think V4 is going to be a good boost for Lambda development. Even in our preliminary testing, we're seeing with V4, you're getting a good 10 to 15% cold start and performance improvements because it has a lot less memory allocation, so a lot less garbage collection pressure. Even the size, the core DLL of the SDK went from 2.5 megs in V3 to 900K. So really trying to get rid of a lot of the technical debt. This is our first major version in over 10 years. So, this is again, cool. So hoping the community pays attention. This is coming out again, try out the preview 13, because again, we're hoping to GA this pretty soon. The only thing that's going to stop us is if people tell us, hey, there's something wrong at this point. So that's my last shout out. So.
All righty. Well, hey, first of all, Norm, I want to thank you. This is a fantastic demo. Super exciting. I'm maybe thinking of brushing up my .NET skills. I do remember being excited for 3.5 to come out. So that does tell you where I'm at there. I'm very sad we didn't get to discuss that vinyl connection behind you. That's pretty amazing. But I do want to say thank you so much for joining us. If you're new to Serverless Office Hours, we do this every Tuesday, same time, same place. And we would love to see this. And you actually get me for the next 2 weeks. So next week we are working on some information. We're actually changing it, so I can't tell you what's coming up yet, but it could be some MCP stuff, which obviously MCP is that's the big buzzword. So I'm not just throwing that in there
a couple of times.
Yeah. So it is definitely the big one. So with that, I'm going to go ahead and sign us out. Thanks again, Norm. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you later. All right, Paco, back to you.